This is The Roadmap with Ted Jenkin.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Roadmap. I'm Ted Jenkin, your host, and this show is exclusively on America's Small Business Network. Every week I try to bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs and business owners in and around the United States, all kinds of businesses, technology, blue collar, white collar. Today, we're talking about pie. Yes, I'm talking about pie. I've got Amanda Wilbanks as the CEO of the Southern Baked Pie Company. I want to tell you folks, I not only love this business, I've been a customer for a long time. These are the best pies in the business. Savory and sweet. Thanks for taking some time to be on the show today.
Thank you, Ted, for having me.
Let's just start and tell people, how the heck did you get into the pie business?
How do you start making pies? It's kind of crazy. I started making them out of my house about 13 years ago, and the idea was that would be a good way to meet my new neighbors. So we were new to the town, we were new to Gainesville, and unfortunately my husband would come home from work at lunch, and he would have his lunch, and he would end up eating a slice of the pie. Well, then it turned into like half a pie that he would eat. So one day he came home and he said, either you need to stop baking or you need to start selling. And he signed me up for a festival on a Tuesday, and I started selling pies on a Thursday.
It's like a farmer's market.
It's like a farmer's market, yes. It was just this small town festival called Mule Camp in Gainesville, and I went to Sam's and bought a tent and got all my ingredients and created a business card on Word. We didn't have like Canva or Photoshop back then, and I named it the first pie I ever made, which was a buttermilk pie. And his mom, Alex's mom, my husband's mom, had come into town from Denver and taught me how to make a buttermilk pie. And it was like this, just delicious, sweet.
Is that the first pie? It was just a buttermilk pie?
It was a buttermilk pie, and that was the original name of the company. We changed it years later to Southern Baked Pie Company, but that was how I started. I didn't know what else to name it, so I was like, well, why not name it that?
When you were selling initially, it literally was just two people. You make a limited supply. People will come to the farmer's market. How did it progress to you opening a store, or you just started to sell online? How did it start to matriculate?
So it really just started with, I did that first festival, and then the next weekend I heard about another festival, so I actually ended up calling 911 to get connected, to get into that festival. I called and asked for the sheriff. I knew the police had to be working the festival in that town, and I said, can you please put me through to the sheriff? So I say all that to say, I ended up in that festival. So it started with two festivals. It was Gold Rush and Dahlonega, and then from there, I just built an email list. When I was at festivals, I would lay out a yellow legal notepad and I'd be like, sign up with your name and email. We ship pies all over the United States. We do tons of corporate gifting. And I had never shipped a pie in my life. So I figured out, I got my first two corporate customers. One was a pine straw business and a landscape company, very similar. And they had no idea that I shipped those pies out of my house. So my husband was in logistics and he understood that world and packaging. So we just started building packaging and testing it, and then we shipped them. I started in September of 2013, and then November of 2013, I started shipping my first pies.
So when does it dawn on you that this is moving from like a hobby, something that's cool, I bake some pies at home, I sell them at festivals, into this is going to be a business. It's going to be a family business.
It's going to be a family business. It really started after Christmas. So I remember baking all the pies out of my house. I'd emailed everybody, said, pick them up for the holidays. I'll deliver them to a civic center. And I remember loading up Alex's old Lexus with all these pies in the trunk and pulling into the civic center. And I called my mom and said, can you bring me your Suburban? So we pull up with all these pies and everybody is waiting. And it was a couple hundred pies. And it was just like, okay, there is a need for this. People are buying out of my house. They're coming up to my door to buy. So at that point, we decided to open a store in Gainesville. It was a tiny,
That's the first store that you opened up. What goes in, besides the location, there are a lot of people probably at home thinking, I want to open up a nice little coffee shop, or I want to open up a clothing store. It's not that easy, even in that first store. Like, what'd you have to think about when you were opening that first store?
Well, first I had to think about money because I had $400.
It's not free.
Yeah, when we started, we had $400 to our name. So we had saved everything that we had made over time, but it's not free. So you've got to get money, obviously. And then the build out of it. I was in the construction business. I'd never built out a house, so I was building out this bakery. And then the staffing and the planning of hiring people.
Right.
I had never owned my own business, so that was different. And then the marketing aspect of it, I would say, is the hardest part, like trying to figure out how to build a brand that is unique, that is recognizable, that is scalable. Those were just some of the initial challenges.
When you go retail, and you open up that store, there's a whole bunch of things to think about with the lease and probably the commercial equipment that you had to get in there.
Yes.
But then how do you get the brand out there? You're doing these festivals, now you're in Gainesville, you got the store. How do you get people to know, hey, Southern Baked Pie Company, we're open for business?
We're open for business. That's the hardest part. Back in 2013, Instagram wasn't that popular yet. Facebook had not been around, honestly, but a couple of years, 5 or 6 years. But I just really went heavily into social media. So, and email marketing. Those were the two things. I had built that email list over 6 months of customers that bought the pie, tasted the pie, loved the pie. And I just constantly, from day one, I would send 2 or 3 emails a week and market to those people and just say, we're open, we're here. And I put my face on social media, and I would talk and taste the product and tell people about it. And that's really how I started, was no paid advertising. Everything was just organic Instagram and Facebook posts, and then email marketing.
How do you think about it? Because a lot of owners may be in a retail type business or any type of business. How do you think about your energy and your money spend between email marketing, because customers may do repeat business, especially in your business, could be different holidays or for different milestones in their life, versus social media, where you get people to kind of like feel like they're tasting the product. They feel like that they're seeing how much people are enjoying the product. How do you think about that?
You know, I think now that's the hardest thing to think about, is where do you spend a lot of your time? Is it on social? Is it paid advertising? Is it email marketing? But we just looked at the cost of doing businesses on those platforms, and whichever one had the lowest cost is the one that we would lean more heavily into. So email marketing is cheap. I mean, text marketing, we did phenomenal with that over the years. Really? Oh my gosh, text marketing was great. In 2019, I remember we spent 2020, I'm sorry, we spent $30,000 on text marketing, and we generated $1 million in revenue. And that was game changing. How about that for ROI?
You don't believe in influencers, right?
Not as much.
You're not going to pay an influencer, or every once in a while someone to go up there and say, this is the best pie in the world. You just let the product and your customers themselves do the marketing?
Do the marketing, yes. I think that's important.
What about Google reviews, though?
Google reviews, I think, are huge. We ask for those. We ask for those on the bottom of our receipts. And so I think you can lean heavily into that, because as soon as somebody searches you, I feel like people trust those, Google reviews that are written.
Do you think it makes that big of a difference? I do personally, but do you think when you look at it, someone sees Southern Baked Pie Company, 4.8 stars. I feel like 4.5 is like that Mendoza line where you're really, really, really good. But it says 112 people like this. Does that influence people to make those buying decisions?
I think it does. I think it gives you initially about that street cred right there, that somebody has eaten it, they've taken a picture of it, they're showing you the slice. It's not something that's hyper edited. So I think people feel like that's real and genuine. And I also think like press and PR is important. I would say in the very beginning, we hired a PR agency, I would say maybe 4 or 5 years into business. And I think getting those accolades like, Jenna Bush loving the pies, Hoda loving the pies, some of those celebrity endorsements definitely help. And when you're in a food business, they're very real and genuine. The people have to eat the product to actually endorse it, or for press to feature it. So I think that helped us in a sense also from, a national scale for e-com.
So what do you think about the SKUs right now? What I mean by that is that I feel like, when I look at the business, you obviously have sort of 2 parts of this, the sweet pies, and then you have the savory pies. Is there a point of saturation about how many SKUs you add and the times that you add those SKUs? Because I've seen you over the years, there are some pies that seem like they're there all the time, and some are seasonal, and that may be, I guess, because of fruit or whatever it may be. But how do you think about that?
The way we think about it is keep it simple, stupid at Southern Baked. So when you have really good core flavors, we stick with those. So we have 6 core flavors. They were family recipes. All of our recipes are developed by me or my husband or my mother-in-law or my family. And I think it's just important that you don't go too wide in your product offerings. We offer three sizes: whole pies, petite pies, 5-inch pies, which are individual servings, and slices. So we keep it very simple. We've kept it that way since the very beginning, and I plan to. We also don't try and do the new latest and greatest trends in food. We're more traditional, classic, and I think I think those kind of brands stand the test of time, and can kind of parlay into the future a little bit longer.
You can't beat some of these. I know this time of season, as we're taping this today and going through this, that I was saying the lemon chess pie and the key lime pie. And I mean, like, you can't beat a good slice of key lime pie. If it's done right,
so good.
When it's done wrong,
It is wrong.
It is wrong
You taste
there.
that bitterness of the lime, and you're like, I want like.
But what
key
about the
lime
savory
pie.
pies? How did you? Where did you start? Because you didn't start with savory pies, right?
no.
It was sweet, and then you moved into it. And I've had the tomato pie and other pies that are in there that are really delicious. But chicken pot pie being the best and my favorite, of course.
Okay.
Never goes wrong when it's cold outside or rainy or whatever it may be. But when you decided to make the switch over to that, and did that change the back of commercial baking or how you had to build your infrastructure?
Definitely. So we made the switch when we still had the one little store in Gainesville. We just dipped our toes into trying to make a chicken pot pie to see how it would sell. At the end of the day, people are only going to buy so many sweet pies a month. But I was like, if I could get a dinner option that people could take home that's at a reasonable price, that's nutritious and has good quality ingredients, I think that we'll pull in a different market, or we'll get customers to engage with us more than once a month, or a lot of our customers buy as gifts. So I needed something that they would buy for themselves and take home and enjoy. So that's really why we came up with the savory pies, and they've been a huge hit.
You know, talk to us about logistics, because I'm always amazed by just Amazon as the organization. Like, it just blows my mind away that I could order a toothbrush online and like 3 p.m. that afternoon it's there on my doorstep. It's just truly remarkable. But when you're dealing with food and you've got to be able to ship it to potentially faraway locations, meaning that if you're in Atlanta and you got to ship to California or somewhere else, you still want that person to have the same experience, taste the food the same way. What have you learned about shipping and how you deal with that from an infrastructure perspective?
I would say that was one of our biggest challenges, is figuring out how to get the product to taste the exact same when it leaves our facility and look the same, equally as beautiful as it tastes. And we've really just dove deep into packaging and security and buying pack lines and optimizing like our picking and packing system, because we're a small we're packing tiny items. You know, we're smaller boxes. So, and we have a bunch of SKUs, so we had to come up with a whole entire system. We actually pack out of 18-wheeler trailers that they use, like shipping containers, frozen shipping containers. We pack out of those because we need length and linear movement so people can walk up and down and pick multiple SKUs. So it's been interesting how we've come up with it, but I would say that's one of the things I'm most proud of and that we're so successful at is food shipping. It ships on dry ice. It gets there within 1 to 2 days. It looks perfect. We have like a 1% failure rate, which is so rare in the food business.
Very rare.
And our number one thing is product quality and food safety. And I think that is what has set us apart in the marketplace. This food is safe when you get it, and it looks great, and it's a great presentation.
Right, especially now, because I feel like the business, you know, beyond what you do retail-wise, we were talking about this, there's a lot of business in e-commerce, and you do a lot of corporate gifting, regular gifts. I noticed that you're doing catering now and things like that. How do you just manage all those lines of business?
It's a challenge. It really just comes down to having a really good sales team and being able to market what you do well. So our core competencies are in gift giving. So we're that product that when somebody has a baby, you send them dinner and dessert. When somebody's lost someone in their life, unfortunately, instead of flowers, you send them a meal, because a meal is something that you remember the taste of something. It's directly connected to your senses. It's one of the 5 senses, and you smell it also. So not only are you tasting, you're smelling, and it makes you feel good to receive that. So client gifts, letting them know that you're appreciative of their business. It's just a small touch point to send somebody a homemade chicken pot pie and a pecan pie. So it's been a challenge to manage the catering and the retail stores and the wholesale side of it and the gifting side, but I think we try and do it well, but we lean heavily into corporate gifting and dealing with corporate clients.
I know when I had my company, not only did we do hundreds and hundreds of pies, but your company allowed us to actually put our note cards in the pies. So it actually, even though it came from you, it still felt like it came from us. And what kind of great referral gift. A lot of companies send out pens or notepads or a Yeti mug or whatever it may be, but there's nothing like having that pie. The feedback I got was great all the time.
Thank you, Ted.
I'm curious, when did you decide to go from store 1 to store 2 to store 3, and what kind of turbulence did you experience trying to grow multiple stores?
Multiple stores. It was really hard. Gainesville did great because we were a small fish in a big pond. I think there wasn't a lot of competition there, but we then branched into the Atlanta market, and we opened Buckhead and Alpharetta within 1 month of each other. That was not planned.
Was that better or worse to do them close?
Much worse, because neither one of them in the beginning out of the gate did really well. In Gainesville, we were a big fish in a small pond. In Atlanta, we were a small fish in a big pond.
Right.
We didn't have that brand recognition. I did not have that customer base there. So to be honest, those stores struggled for the first year. And it really took good managers in there who were willing to make a name for us in the community, and really own that store to be able to get our name. It was grassroots effort. We were taking pies to everybody we knew.
Wow.
Every business around within a 5-mile radius, our managers were walking into a slice of pies. So it wasn't like it just came overnight. After we got our name established in Atlanta, we opened another Atlanta store in Vinings, and out of that gate, like that one did amazing. But I think you have to establish yourself as a name in that area. Otherwise, it takes time. It's challenging.
So as a CEO now, you start looking out in the future, and some businesses become lifestyle businesses, and some end up becoming growth businesses. But as you look at the business now and think about, do I open more stores myself? Do I franchise? Do I try to blow up e-commerce? These are tough decisions for a CEO of a company. How do you try to view that in the landscape?
It is very challenging. Our vision 5 years ago is completely different post-COVID than, what it was before. So now we're really focused on where can we scale the fastest and the most successfully and the most profitably. That's kind of what we look at when we're evaluating to go franchise or to go more deeply into grocery or to pour more into e-com. The way we're leading now is more into e-com. We were looking heavily into franchising and we pulled back a little bit, but that's not to say that we won't revisit that.
More legalities when you get into franchising. You're dealing with the FDD and all the states, and obviously different states have different regulatory issues. And there are a lot of owners, don't you think, that they may be in a market, you're in Atlanta, and all of a sudden they say, well, Nashville is just like Atlanta, or Charlotte's just like Atlanta, but no city is exactly the same.
No.
And nobody knows your brand, so it's just not that easy to just jump to another city.
It's not, and there's a lot more upfront investment with that versus the infrastructure for shipping right now is built, it's scalable, we have all the capacity to produce more than we could ever imagine. So that is set up to scale that. Just like you said, we learned a great lesson early on, and I'm thankful for this. We were great in Gainesville, and we were, the hometown hero there, but then when you open in Atlanta, Nashville could be the same way. It's a much harder lift to get it up and going, I would say.
Now, if people have never experienced having one of these pies. Amanda brought us one of the pecan. Some people, it depends on where you live in Georgia, whether it's pecan or pecan. We always say it's sort of not the Macon-Dixon line, it's that Macon-Dixon line, not the Mason-Dixon line about where I think in Georgia. But this is such a beautiful pie. I will tell you, if you've never had these pies, my recommendation would either be to do like a 4-pack of like the savory or a 4-pack of the sweet, and you get to taste these. I'm smelling this and I want to eat it. I want to ask you one final question here, which is the kids. I know your kids are getting older. They're not old yet, but they're getting older. Are they involved in the business at all now? Do they get involved in this?
Yes, it's funny you would ask. My 9-year-old is obsessed with the business and has asked for a 3D printer for his birthday so that he can start 3D printing. He has his whole entire business plan he told us about last week so that he can start, I guess, hustling 3D printed objects at his school. He's obsessed with the business. My children hear about it all the time. It's the dinner topic. We're always talking about business. And a lot of people say, I don't know that that's good for your kids. I think it's great for your kids.
I think it's great.
It is great. Even my 5-year-old, Caroline Grace, is like, Mommy, I want to be a baker like you. So
does that make it harder thinking about the future that obviously there's always the idea that somebody could sell, but there's also the idea that, gosh, my kids are young. What if they want to take this freight train over at some point and run it? So it's hard to think about that.
That's very hard, and it's funny you say that because my husband and I talk about that all the time. I want to create a legacy brand, and because I have a 15-year-old, and the amount that they know about AI and digital marketing and stuff that they learn at such a young age, I can see them propelling the company into the most amazing, direction. So it's hard to think, gosh, would I sell it, or do I want them to grow up in it and be able to run it? So,
Well, it's an amazing story. You built an amazing brand. Really, I know it's here in Atlanta, but people buy these pods all over the United States. Thank you so much for coming in today.
thank you,
And
Ted.
folks, thanks for watching the program. I mean, I hope you get inspired hearing the stories of entrepreneurs like Amanda. Started this literally out of her house, literally at a farmer's market, and now has 4 stores. She's got e-commerce all around the United States. Tremendous story. Get fired up. Think about becoming an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, please, every week, watch America's Small Business Network. I'm your host, Ted Jenkin, exclusively here on America's Small Business Network.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Ted Jenkin.